Okay, I think we can get started. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar on the topic of maximizing relief funding. My name is Kim Oppelt, and I am the Director of Advocacy and Community at CLASS, which is a virtual classroom technology that adds teaching and learning tools to Zoom. We have some really timely and interesting information to share with you today. And a lot of our time is going to be spent on the question and answers. Period. So feel free to add anything into that Q&A box within your Zoom account, and we'll address those questions both within the presentation and then during the Q&A time. So looking forward to your questions, and feel free to throw those in there at any time. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our panel of experts today. We have Dr. Erasmus Addae, who is the AVP of Distance Education at Austin Community College. We also have, we think we have Ron Solomon, who is at Baton Rouge Community College. He has not quite joined us yet, so we hope he'll be able to join us later. And then we also have Dr. Jenny House, who is the principal and president of RedRock Reports. So very excited to have you all here. Thank you for joining us. So before I hand it over to Jenny, I am just going to give you a quick overview of CLASS and some of the trends that we've actually identified. So some of you may have seen this already, but we did a survey last year, kind of at the height of the pandemic, and asked instructors what they were doing in the physical classroom. So what tasks did they typically do in that physical classroom? And what they listed was just lacked about, or it was 60% more of what they couldn't do in the virtual classroom. So what they were doing in the physical classroom actually lacked in the virtual classroom. You can see that here. They were lacking attendance tools. They were lacking assignments, assessments, and quizzes, and the ability to embed videos, and just doing a lot of the interactivity that they were lacking in that typical Zoom classroom. So that's how CLASS was developed. We were able to address actually the needs of instructors by utilizing that already familiar Zoom platform and adding some of the most important teaching and learning tools on top of it. So with CLASS, the transition to online learning has really been made a lot easier. And as we move forward in this new normal, colleges and universities are actually able to deliver more highly connected, virtual, personalized experiences to their students. So this is all great, but how are institutions paying for this? There's been such a great transition to technology and to online classrooms, and a lot of it is here to stay. And we're hearing from quite a few institutions that they're looking for funding to pay for this. They're putting together major initiatives, and this is where we wanted to bring our panel of experts in. So before we go into the Q&A, I wanted to turn it over to Jenny to provide a little bit of an overview on what funding is available right now.
Thank you, Kim. And good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the United States right now. The good news is there is money for a change that's coming from the federal government to hopefully help all of you. And I don't think I'm giving any new information to any of you that the CARES Act was the first one that was passed. There is still money available that is from the CARES Act. And I'll show you how to find out where that is. The second one is the Stimulus 2, which was a 4 times increase for higher ed. And the most recent is the American Rescue Plan, and that is a 10 times increase. So, probably a lot of you are saying it's not enough, but it's a huge increase compared to what we had all predicted after the pandemic started. Again, you have to remember that the 2021 budget is still going on. So the money that normally comes to your institutions is still coming. So the different stimulus acts are in addition, and the 2021 budget has also passed. And the states, you'll see a mixed bag in terms of some of the states have a great deal of money. I live in one of those right now, and I'll tell you about that one. And then others, are still struggling to see what their budget is going to look like. So let's take a look at, which one for higher ed. So the CARES Act in March 27th, it was signed, was $16 billion. And that really was to address the immediate needs that the pandemic had thrust upon all of the higher ed institutions, actually K-12 as well. But for all of you, that 16 billion was for, the students as well as the institutions, and about 50-50, because, it really impacted both parts of your funding. Then in December, we saw that, this pandemic is still going on and it still needs more funding. And all of you, were great about letting your legislators know that you needed more relief. And so another 21.5 billion was passed in that. And then recently, the American Rescue Plan. And if you think about the first two, those were really to address the immediate needs. Okay, what is this pandemic doing to us? Some of it was reimbursement for funds that you're already putting for online learning, getting, helping the students, et cetera. But the American Rescue Plan is really, okay, we've kind of stabilized the pandemic, but where do we go from here? It's kind of like businesses right now. Okay, let's take a breath, and how do we move forward? And what does education look like now going forward? And how do we fund it? So that's the American Rescue Plan. So the total stimulus funding is 77.1 billion. So let's look at this. So there were really two sources. One is the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. So the primary goal, as I said before, is the impact of COVID on education, including the costs associated with the transition to distance education, the faculty and staff trainings, and federal aid grants to students. And as I said, if you really look at the regulations, that's the important thing, is about what they predicted was about 50% would be to help the students. And then 50% were the institutional needs. And, in that institutional part, purchasing the learning technology that aids in the transition. That's not only for the students, but also for the faculty and the infrastructure in your universities and colleges and community colleges to be able to facilitate that. Also, faculty and staff professional development. Everybody, I don't care if you were a kindergarten teacher or, you were working with PhD students, everybody was, taken aback by this, immediate need for everybody in remote learning. But that's not going to change. You look at all the statistics that are going on, even as we go back to face, there will be always the online learning. And how do the teachers, the faculty, how do you work with that? What are the most effective strategies for teaching this online learning? And reimbursement for distance learning expenses already incurred. So, it really is looking at, a lot of you had to put the money in way sooner than the feds got the money to reimburse you. So that money could be used for that. There was a second fund that was part of the CARES Act and Stimulus 2, and that is the Governor's Emergency Relief Fund. And the governors got money. The first one was $3 billion. The second one was $4 billion to really address what the needs were in their particular states. And let me tell you, as I've looked at all of the states, how they used that money was all over the map. Some states used it totally for higher ed. Some states did it totally for K through 12. So, you know, it really depends on where you are, but it allowed the governors to allocate the funds that was, you know, most needed in their particular states. Right now, you know, if you look at everything, the language of the GEARS Act, and when I show you where you can look at what's left, you'll see that the solutions to address learning loss is the big one. You know, it's learning loss, you know, and how you can use distance learning to do that effectively, and virtual access to learning anytime, anywhere. So, you know, and you know that your students, a lot of them are still at home. Some of them have even gone to other countries, other states, but that virtual access, because they are still part of your community. And so how you can use that.
And there's a quick question, Jenny, in the Q&A. Are the funds allocated through HERF and GEAR the same federal funds, only distributed differently, or are they separate funding channels?
So I'm sorry, Kim, the first part of your question.
Are the funds allocated through the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund and the Governor's Education Fund? Are they kind of the same pot of money and they're just distributed differently, or are they coming from different places?
It was all part of like the CARES Act. Okay, that's the big umbrella. So yes, they all came out of the CARES Act, but then the CARES Act allocated them to different funds. So the HERF fund was separate from the GEAR fund. So yes, they, you know, and the HERF fund went exactly to the states who then allocated them to the specific public and nonprofit colleges. The GEAR fund went to the governor's office, and then the governors allocated them. So in that respect, they really were separate.
Great, thank you.
Okay, how do you find out what's left of the money? So there's an education stabilization fund portal that the Department of Education has put together. And they, the last time it was updated was February 28th, but don't, actually March 31st. So they are doing that more rapidly. I was just on a call with the Department of Education, and their goal is, you know, every 2 weeks that they could update that. But that really depends on how accurately and how well the states report back to them by that. So if you look at just this one, you can look at how much was awarded to your state and how much has been spent and what the percentage is. So that is really great because it's both CARES and stimulus too. And why isn't the American Rescue Plan in there? Because a lot of you haven't even seen the money from that yet. That is still in the process of being allocated. So it's what is, you know, available from CARES and CRRSA, and that I'm not even going to go into the name of that. I think it's Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. Only the government can come up with a catchy name like that. So what you do when you see this page is you click on your state, And then Kim, will you go to the next slide? And when you get to your state, so this is California, and this is what you'll see when you click on here. You'll see how much was allocated, the different programs, how much it was spent to. You'll see the percentage of what has been spent. But then, if you look at the bottom right quadrant, you can scroll down to the different institutions and see how much has been spent. And when you look at this, it is amazing. California in general has spent about 75%, but I think I was looking at Idaho yesterday and it was like 6%. So that's why it's really important for you to be up to date on, what's going on. So this allows you to really take a look at your own and, be in touch with, what is still there. And boy, if you haven't seen any of that money, it's gone to your state. So, you need to get in touch with your state if you haven't seen that.
And
Next.
where's this this website? Is this on the Department of Education?
This is on the Department of Education. If you even Google or whatever your search engine is, Education Stabilization Fund portal, it'll take you right there. Okay. It is a great tool. For a while, I didn't tell people about it because it hadn't been updated while we were having the change in administration, but they are getting back on this and it's very helpful now.
Great, perfect. And Christine had a question about, is there an overview, like a high level set of data in this portal or anywhere else that shows kind of how institutions overall have been spending the money? And then which students received aid as well?
Wouldn't that be a great thing? Wouldn't that be a great thing? No, as yet, that is part of the CARES Act and part of the CRRSA, as well as the American Rescue Plan. It says that there should be transparency, but as yet we haven't seen the reports because that transparency depends on what you as an institution are reporting to your state, and then the state will send that to the Department of Education. So there is going to be a transparency portal. It's not there yet. This is the best we have at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
So highlights. So from the American Rescue Plan, and remember, this is the goal of this one is really, okay, let's breathe. We're here. Where are our students and what are we going to do to prepare for the next phase? So 36 billion for public and nonprofit, 3 billion for HBCUs, minority serving, you can see all of those. And then 198 million for institutions designated as having the greatest unmet needs related to the coronavirus. Really, if you think about it, this is your time to look at your students, where are they? What are their needs? What can you do to get your infrastructure ready for the next phase? And that there's always going to be virtual learning. So how are you taking care of that? And then, your infrastructure, and then how are you addressing specific learning loss needs? But it's a great time for you to step back, do your planning, look at how you're ready for online learning, for the future, and how do you help your students and your faculty to have the tools and the infrastructure to do this.
Great. And do you have any more information about the Strengthening Institutions program? Do you know what the criteria are for that?
I don't at the tip of my tongue, but Kim, what I said to Kim before this started is if I got a question like that, I will research that, get that information to Kim, and she will get that out to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then another question, if it's okay just to take these as they're popping up since they're so relevant. Can the CARES Act funds be used for renovation of campus facilities and buildings to ensure they better serve our students' housing and or program needs during COVID or due to COVID? Sorry.
They can if they're COVID related. Okay, that's the trick. Because as this transparency comes out, and if it's something that you wanted to do before, before COVID ever hit, and, these are some great things. No, you've got to be able to relate it to the impact of COVID and the preparation for addressing learning loss and online learning into the future. So it can be used for that. Different states are doing things like California. As I said, California has passed in January 38 billion for higher ed, and they just came out, the governor just proposed another 12 billion. But the interesting part about that is they have a $4 billion allocation for low-cost student housing. So, some of the states are kicking in their own money for doing that. And then they can go for a waiver if that had to do with, the COVID-related issues. So, I'm not saying it can't be used. It's just that the big thing that you have to remember is that COVID-related impact.
Right. And that can include student support programs as well?
Yes, absolutely. Remember, 50% of all this funding, big numbers, 50% goes to students, and all of the related issues around students.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, spending deadlines. How long do you have for this? It's interesting. Higher ed is very different than the K-12 spending deadlines. Basically, each of the stimulus acts have 1 year from when you get the money. And the reason they put it that way is different states have different, it's taken longer for some states to get the money to the institution than others. So it's 1 year from when you get the money, you need to obligate the funds, right? But if you haven't, if you've obligated it, but, the new money has come in. So if you think about that, it's going to be overlapping. So because it was March 27th, 2020, then December 2020, then March 2021. So you can see that that's overlapping within a year. So you're actually technically, they want you to spend all your CARES Act money before you do the CRRSA, before you do the American Relief Plan. So it's all going to be overlapping over that time. So technically, if you don't get the money until July 2021 for the American Relief Plan, you don't have to obligate it until 2022, okay? But that obligation means that you've obligated it, but some of those, to deliver the services or, take receipt of the equipment might not take place until the 22-23 school year, but you've obligated those funds by the end of 2022.
Perfect.
It's kind of complex, I know, but if you think about it, think of each one as 1 year from when you get those funds till you need to obligate it.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, and thank you, Jenny. That was so helpful. Every time I hear this, it makes more and more sense. So thank you for that. And I know that there are still a few more questions, and I just want to get Erasmus into this conversation, and we'll have some time for some more Q&A as well. So I'm going to stop sharing so that so we can see everyone. So let's start, Erasmus, with if you wouldn't mind giving us an overview of maybe Austin Community College, but then also you have a very interesting job, I think. And so if you want to give us an overview of maybe your what you do in your daily life, and how long has this position been around as well?
Okay, thank you, Kim, for the opportunity to share what we do at Austin Community College with the audience. My name is Erasmus Addae, and I serve as the Associate Vice President of Distance Education at Austin Community College. Austin Community College operates in a highly collaborative environment. So my role is to ensure that the institution is providing the technology, the resources to support our faculty and students in distance education. A bit about the institution. We are located in Austin, and we serve the Central Texas area as a primary gateway to higher education and technical training. Our mission is to provide, like any other community college, to provide open door access to an affordable college education for those who want to earn a degree or certificate, or even to acquire marketable skills to advance their careers. Our total annual enrollment is about 70,000 plus. We have about 5,500 dual credit students. We are a guided pathway school, and so we have 10 area of studies and 100 plus degree programs and certificates, and currently 37 fully online degrees and certificate. One interesting fact about Austin Community College is that our visionary chancellor, we have a very visionary chancellor, and we are perhaps the only institution that bought a mall and repurposed that for a campus to become a campus. So our Highland campus is located in a mall in Austin.
Amazing. For all those students, that's probably a good place for that.
Yes, we do have some interesting spaces over there. As a 600 plus computer lab in there where students
highly connected. That is great. So what are your plans for the upcoming school year, the summer, and even just beyond when it comes to continuing or expanding your distance and online experiences for students?
Okay, I think most people agree with me that we have had about 10 years worth of digital transformation in a period of 1 year as a result of the pandemic, right? We have learned to provide online courses and programs in disciplines that we thought were not possible. We couldn't do in the past. At ACC, our chancellor and provost has challenged us to expand our online programs post-pandemic, right? So we currently, as I said, we have 37 fully online awards that a student can complete without stepping foot on campus. Through our chancellor's priorities, we have targeted to add additional 13 fully online awards in the next year or so, which will be about 50. And then when we get to 50, that will be about 50% access to online education for our students who want to take advantage of that. And so at ACC, we look at online learning or online program offerings from our equity and access lenses. And so we are going to continue to expand our programs in disciplines that lend themselves to online learning as we move forward.
Okay, great, wow. And then what kind of metrics are you tracking to measure? I don't know if it's even the efficacy of online learning, but even just, enrollment numbers, things like that. What are you tracking right now in your job?
So we do track enrollment numbers, as you rightly mentioned. We don't want to just offer online programs and online certificates. We want students to be successful. And so we track the success rate of students. And in tracking the success rate of students, we introduce equity lens into that. So we are also digging deeper into the data to see in terms of our population, who is doing well, who is not doing well, so we can better support them. So we track all of that.
Okay.
Committee.
Wow.
Yeah.
Perfect. That sounds great. So one more question for you, and then I have one for Jenny, but and to the audience, feel free again to put some questions in. I see some in there now, and we'll definitely get to them. But I wanted to just ask you about how the efficacy and the attitude of the students and the faculty and even the staff, how has their kind of attitude changed toward technology, and how has that evolved, and how do you think that changes how you're approaching the use of technology and even online courses going forward?
Okay. So the pandemic left us with no choice but to move online.
Right.
We are all aware of that. Students, faculty, staff, we all had to move online. We faced so many challenges along the way, but despite the challenges the year has presented, we have also heard about many positives from our students and faculty and staff. The level of collaboration we've seen among faculty in terms of providing peer support on technology use has been mind-blowing. Our Teaching and Learning Excellence Division at ACC established a collaborative space for faculty to exchange ideas and to support each other. They have also shown great interest in online learning technologies, professional development. It's funny that Jenny mentioned that in her presentation about taking advantage of the funding to provide professional development. We did that, and faculty showed lots of interest and showed up when they were asked to attend a professional development. On the student side, we did virtualize a lot of our services for students. So for example, assessments were virtualized, proctoring of assessments have been virtualized, and we did that through some of the funding as well. Our support services, almost all the support services have been virtualized. Wow. And the feedback has been great. In fact, we have consistently averaged 90% plus in our students' feedback on the support that we have been providing. Students have taken advantage of the virtual services, and seeing faculty support each other and student satisfaction is certainly a desired outcome at ACC.
Great. Yeah, and actually Karen has a great question related to that. And what type of training was conducted to help your staff and your instructors move online and teach online?
Okay. So we got somewhat of a leg up in terms of training. Prior to the pandemic, our provost had directed that every faculty member that is teaching or was teaching distance education at that time should take training, should have their courses redesigned, and to meet the quality matters standard. So at the time the pandemic hit, we had already trained about 500 distance education faculty out of about 2,000. And when the pandemic hit, we ramped that through the summer, and we provided professional development on learning management systems, video editing tools, and equity, even introducing equity perspective in teaching online. That all was provided.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so important, and it's great that that ESF funding can go toward that. And Jenny, have you PD included, what kind of innovative ways and uses of that ESF money have you seen institutions spending on?
So, I am just blown away with what's going on at Austin. Erasmus, that is phenomenal, so in terms of innovations, the innovations that a lot of people really had to jump in to do online came in the rural areas, because a lot of those did not have the connectivity, especially at the beginning. So the hotspots that people installed, I mean, they were in coffee shops, they were, in libraries, they were, any way to help the students to be able to participate, and one of the big things that I didn't talk about at the beginning, especially, and really through all three, is the equity of access. That is a huge one. So the innovations to include a lot of the students that were did not have access, at their homes. That was a big one, so that they could be on, on campus, even though it was a virtual campus. Another thing, Erasmus talked about the pathways. It was really to help, and the community colleges were probably the most innovative that we'd seen, because a lot of people that were suddenly out of work, the reskilling that needed to take place really quickly, that how do you get them the technology, so that they could take classes? How do you ramp up those teachers, like Erasmus talked about with professional development, so that they could get on there, and then very quickly establishing and validating good credentialing programs, so that, or certification programs, so that people could get back to work as quickly as possible, but meanwhile taking the courses. And, I really laud a lot of the community colleges, such as Austin's, for being so proactive on this. And again, really addressing the jobs part of it. I think that's where we've seen just tremendous innovations.
Absolutely. And kind of speaking of that multimodal approach, we have quite a few instructors, people who are working in student support services on this meeting. And sometimes it's hard to navigate a campus when it comes to funding decisions and all of those things. So this is a two-part question. First, for Erasmus, where or who's involved in those decisions on your campus, and how would you encourage instructors or advisors or anyone else who sees themselves in this funding? How would you encourage them to advocate for that?
So the main decisions are made at the cabinet level. So my provost is involved in the decision making. My vice president of instruction is involved in that. Vice president of student services are involved in that. But as I indicated earlier on, we operate in a highly collaborative environment. And so our input count in the decision-making process on how to allocate the funds. I mean, when I say our input, everybody else in the institution's input count in how funds are allocated. And so there is open door for us to advocate for funding for our areas in order to support our students and support students and faculty as well.
Right, absolutely. Jenny, anything to add on that? How people should advocate for those funding areas in their own departments?
Well, and one of the things that you have to remember is there are many departments on a campus, and sometimes the student support services, are the last to be looked at. But because of the student mental health, the faculty health, there's a lot of other money that is available through different, buckets to really look at. And what I mean on that one is go back to your 2021 regular budget, the federal budget. There's a tremendous amount of money, still through any of your disabilities funding, but the social emotional health is tremendous, and the student support services should really be looking at that. Another, the FCC is really trying to look at the equity of access also. And, they were looking at it before COVID, and guess what, whether it was partisan or whatever, it wasn't moving forward. But because of COVID, it really escalated and accelerated the decisions to really get more connectivity to the homes. And so there's also money available for connectivity, at the home level and the colleges to the homes. So there's that money, there's the broadband money, so even though we're all in education, there are other buckets of money that a college wants to make sure that they're looking at, whether it's justice, whether it's labor, whether it's the FCC, whether it's agriculture. I live in the Central Valley in California, and there's a tremendous amount of money from the FDA, that in terms of student support and things like that. So be sure and broaden your horizons in terms of looking at different sources of funding and support. This is the time, we've got 3 years to really, revisit what are our long-range goals and where are the different buckets of funding that we can use and commingle to achieve our goals.
Absolutely.
Kim, if I may add to the way that resources are allocated. So one of our chancellor's priorities is to provide an exceptional online education. With that, and this is embedded in our strategic plan. So with that, we are allocating funds to providing technology for students, faculty professional development on the use of technologies, as well as improving other support services to students and faculty. So right from the ground, the allocation of resources is embedded in the chancellor's priorities. As we work through that, the funding is dispersed equitably to all the areas of his priorities.
Absolutely. Okay, that's great. That's so great. We mentioned a little earlier in the conversation, virtual classroom technologies. So I just wanted to touch on quickly, what is the value of equipping your staff and your students really with technologies like virtual classrooms, and even just other learning technology systems, so that they can really, effectively bring learning online, and it's not just an afterthought.
This is to Erasmus?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great.
Oh boy, well, the pandemic hit, we thought we provided everything faculty needed, but it turns out that our faculty need more, right? They need more of everything that we provided. And there's value in them requiring to have more so that they'll be able to better support their students, and then for them to be successful.
Yeah.
We are expanding, and we are going to continue to expand our online delivery options. We are even introducing new innovative delivery modes, such as synchronous online, and then high flex, right, at ACC, to accommodate the needs of our students and faculty. And through the ESF, we have been able to acquire the technologies to support these projects. And as our faculty request for more, we are able to tap into the funds to provide the support that faculty want or need. In fact, our latest acquisition is Class for Zoom, which is coming on board in sometime in July, to provide the needed support for our faculty to be able to teach and manage their synchronous online learning environment.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. And I think high flex has been kind of the buzzword of the semester, I would say. And for those of you who haven't investigated high flex and the benefits that brings, definitely worth looking into. So I think two more questions really quick, and these are both from the audience. And the first will go to both of you. I'm going to start with Jenny, though. How can mid and low level administration and staff advocate for her funds to be spent in new programs and not just paying for existing programming?
So, it's great that we've got a lot of money, and it's great that we have a lot of technology. But what are your goals, and how is that going to help? And I've been teacher, principal, district office, professor, at different levels. And if you aren't clearly succinct about what it is that you're trying to achieve, you're going to have a tough time getting the money and getting the right equipment and the right tools. So, it's really, if you're not at the top of the food chain, it's really putting that plan together. And how is that effectively going to make a difference with how the students learn? And that's always been the biggest, question. And then the rationale of these are the things that I need in order for us to be able to do that. And that's, all of the money that is being given through ESF requires a plan. So, if you're part of that plan, if you're not adding to that plan, you probably aren't going to get those resources that you're asking. So be proactive, get that plan together, and make sure you have those goals of what it is. The tough thing that I'm seeing in a lot of places is we keep throwing out this term learning loss, but how do you know where they are to know that they've lost anything? And so, when you look at the wonderful tools like Class has, part of that assessment is what's the snapshot of where they are in terms of where they should be, because then you can say what they need in order to achieve, either get back to where they should be or to go far beyond. So that is, I've read grants for, the feds, for everybody. That's what you're looking for. And if you have that plan, you probably can make that impact.
Great, thank you. And Erasmus, what sticks out if someone from your campus comes to you to pitch a new product or to pitch a new technology, how can they best advocate for themselves?
So it is very democratized in Austin Community College. The chancellor's priorities are about 5, and we all get to work on the priorities. The priorities have metrics and targets that we have to meet every reporting period.
Mhm.
And we are constantly updating the priorities as we meet our targets and adding new ones. And so during the deliberations to add new targets, that's when we get people to advocate for projects and resources they need in their areas.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I know I said two more questions, but we're going to go with one, one more before the final. Jenny, this is just a quick one for you. I think it's important to tackle, but can a college use CARES funds to, or CARES or any of the ESF funds to increase student enrollment? So can they use it on enrollment initiatives? And then if so, how have you seen any of those initiatives occur?
Okay, that's a great question because it specifically is called out in what can and can't be used for. So it cannot be used for marketing and recruiting. Okay, it can be used for marketing for, learning loss, talking about, things that are COVID related, and if I had to say it once, you'll hear me say it 1,000 times, impact of COVID. So any of the marketing about your institution and the programs that you have that you've learned or improved on, like Erasmus's, you can market those, but you cannot use the money for just a recruitment program. That is a no-no, and it is called out as a no-no. And you could, if your institution is caught using it for that, you could get to reimburse the government.
Great. And this is very timely too, because we just had a conversation with our strategic advisory board, and this topic also came up. And one of the responses was as well, if you're building a highly connected campus, if you're adding new initiatives, if you're adding, highly interactive courses, then that can be used as a marketing point itself in recruitment. So definitely, while it can't be used to recruit students straightforward, you can market your campus as a highly connected campus as you add those.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to be the marketing manager for Erasmus's college, because they are doing so many great things, and all of the initiatives that he's talked about, you could just go crazy, but he's done it, he already has the evidence of efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big marketing point.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I saved Chris's question for last because I think it's very impactful and would love to wrap with it. So let's start with Jenny, and then we'll go to Erasmus with the last word. But how can we start looking forward? So how can we start, instead of replacing what we've been missing and what we've lost, and there's all of this talk about how much we've lost during COVID, how can we start talking about how we build toward the future and putting our resources into those buckets?
I think the exciting thing to me, and you can tell by the color of my hair, I've been in this business a little while, that education will not go back to what it used to be. We have learned so much about how kids learn, the things that we never thought were possible by integrating online learning, with face-to-face. And, we've learned so many new things that to go back would be such a disservice to education. So it's really it's take what we've learned, the best of the best, and how can we continue this and use those funds to build the infrastructure to go forward. So the sustainability of this, let's not go for a cliff that, okay, the money's gone and everything that we've learned and all the progress that we've made goes away. You know, how can we build for sustainability of these exciting new advances that we've made? How can we prepare our teachers, you know, the new teachers, the new administrators, to facilitate this and, you know, have this ready for the future as well as right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as promised, Erasmus, the last word, how can we start looking forward instead of looking back, and what is your charge to do so?
Well, my chancellor and provost have already told me we are not going back to we are not going back to December of 2019, but we are moving forward. And everything we do, we have our faculty and students at the center of it. So we build everything around our student success, and then the faculty ability to support their students in the learning environment. And so that's what we are doing moving forward. And like Jenny said, sustainability is the key. It is not a good idea to build something that you cannot maintain after the money dries up. And so we have that at the back of our minds, and working to improve what we already have, and then introducing new concepts and innovative ideas that we can sustain.
Absolutely. That is the perfect way to end things. Thank you both, Dr. House, Dr. Addae, for being here today. I think we covered a lot of ground, and you know, just with the background of what's available, and then and how you are doing things at ACC is just groundbreaking. So thank you both for sharing your perspective. I know we weren't able to get to all of the questions. So if you did ask a question, we will, and didn't get it answered, we will reach out to you with the response. And if anyone wants to learn more about class, the adding teaching and learning tools to Zoom, feel free to visit us at class.com. And again, thank you so much for being here, and best of luck in your future initiatives.